Welcome to Team Leadership Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Cecilia Martin, and I am so glad to be with you guys today. Hey, I have received your emails, your texts, your notes, and phone calls. All is well. We have been just so busy juggling projects, but we are back on track. Thank you from the bottom of my heart to all of my team players, faithful listeners, and subscribers, not just in the United States, but to my listeners in Brazil and India, Israel, Japan, Ecuador, Denmark, Indonesia, Kenya, Nigeria, Malaysia, and the Philippines. Thank you for tuning in. And I promise it has been worth the wait. I am so honored to have with me today a very special guest, Dr. Anthony Wilbon, Dean of the prestigious Howard University School of Business. Dr. Anthony Wilbon's expertise is in strategic technology management. He is also a certified project management professional. Dr. Wilbon's particular areas of research include technology strategy, quantitative analysis, information technology, and technology innovation and entrepreneurship. His professional experience and capabilities extend to business, management, and technology-related topics, including systems application and technology, production and operations management, project management, systems development lifecycle, and quantitative and qualitative research methodology. Dr. Anthony Wilbon, Dean of Howard University School of Business, who is the epitome of excellence. Thank you for joining me on Team Leadership Radio. It is such an honor.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Appreciate you having me on.
So let's dive right in. We want to know the man behind the title, the man behind the role. Tell me a little bit about your family and what it was like growing up in Flint, Michigan.
My beginnings are relatively humble, I think. I didn't come from a super sophisticated academic background. We were pretty simplistic in terms of being a basic blue-collar, middle-class family growing up in Flint, which was at the time a very, very big hub for General Motors. There was a lot of General Motors plants, and so it was right for the migration of African Americans from the South to the North to get those jobs, and my family was part of that migration. And so I grew up in a fairly middle-class family, and most everybody kind of employed by General Motors. Flint at the time was a strong economic environment, great school systems, and pretty good place to grow up at the time.
Mm-hmm. And so are you an only child or do you have siblings?
No, I have an older sister, and I was the second in that line of four siblings.
Wow.
And my older sister is quite a bit older, well, about 12 years older. Then it was three of us in a row.
Oh, wow. Sounds sounds like fun. Stair steppers.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, all right. And your mom and dad, what did they do for a living?
So they both worked at General Motors. Again, at the time, I think Flint probably was about a couple 100,000 people in the city. General Motors was the largest employer.
Right.
Buick was headquartered there. There was Chevy plants and several subsidiary plants of General Motors, and my parents worked there. Again, just basic education, but it was an opportunity for this company really gave them an opportunity to have a very strong middle class lifestyle, in spite of the fact that they didn't have a great educational background.
Mm-hmm. So what drew you to college, particularly, I'm guessing because of the culture and where you grew up, electrical engineering was the thing to do? Or did you dream of being in engineering when you were a child? How did you get there?
No, absolutely not. It was, again, because of the environment of Flint, really the school systems were developed to get people out of high school and go work for the plants. There was really not much college prep going on at all. Most people just migrated directly into plant jobs. So it was fairly rare for anybody to go to college at the time that I was there, unless they were on some kind of athletic scholarship or something like that. So it was toward the tail end of my high school career that General Motors started to decline and people were looking for alternatives. And the schools really weren't prepared for that as well. So I kind of fell into college as an option, knowing that I didn't want to work in the plant through at the time that I was there, they had options for students to go to vocational schools. And so I went to a vocational school that was connected to the Flint Public Schools. And there is where I met a gentleman who was an electrical engineer. I was taking an electronics course. And he kind of exposed me to what that career might look like, encouraged me to follow it. I had no idea what that even was, what electrical engineering was. And he actually was a graduate of Michigan State University, so he gave me insights on what it would be like there. And then I had visited colleges because I was on the track team at various track meets. So I kind of got enamored by the college environment through that exposure. And so that was my opening to pursue that career option at that university.
Yeah, sure. So you are a first generation college student. What was that like for you? Not just academically. I mean, clearly you were a smart, bright young man, but what was it like to adjust socially to the college life as a first gen college student?
Well, to be honest with you, it was completely shocking to say the least.
Hmm.
First, most people kind of take for granted that they're going to college is an easy transition, and particularly if you have parents or other siblings or other people who've gone before you, you kind of have some thoughts about what it would look like. Being a first generation college student, it's really a culture shock because you really don't know what to expect. And again, academically, even though I was smart enough to compete, I wasn't really prepared to compete because I didn't come from a college prep high school. So the first year was certainly challenging to get used to being away from home on this college campus. At the time, Michigan State was a huge campus, still is, 45,000 students. And so it was easy to kind of get lost in that morass of people and so forth. But it was, I adapted fairly quickly, and within during the first year was easy to transition into the academic piece. The social piece kind of caught up with itself.
Sure. Did you join any clubs or fraternities?
Yeah, I all of it. I was, I kind of fell into at the time the dorm that I was staying in had student government and also a Black caucus. So I became president of the student Black caucus for the dorm. I also joined Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity at the time. Was exposed to various clubs within the engineering college. And so, yeah, after the first year, and actually even during the first year, I really kind of got involved pretty quickly into the social scene and the club organizational scene.
Sure. I think those are very important because I know a lot of students don't feel prepared their first year of college. And so I think joining those activities and clubs are very much helpful, but it really is just a learning process. You just have to work it out that first year, being on your own, independent.
Absolutely.
I think for me, it was a little different because I was still in the military when I went to college. And so I had had that privilege of training and development in the military. So by the time I got to college, I was a little bit more disciplined and focused, I think, than some of my peers, only because I took a year or two to get there.
And that's helpful. Yeah, that is very helpful.
Yeah. So you went to, so you got your undergrad.
Mhm.
And then you went on to get your MBA. Tell me about your experience at Howard. How did you go from Michigan to Washington, D.C.? That's a big stretch there.
Well, when I finished my undergrad in engineering, my first job was with a company called Westinghouse Electric.
Mm-hmm.
which is now called Northrop Grumman. And so I was working in radar systems, building radar systems for F-16 fighter planes and so forth. It was very detailed work, working in a lab on various modules and circuitries and those kinds of things. And so I realized fairly early on that that was not of interest to me. It was very particular and specific and isolating work. And I wanted to have a broader perspective of the organization and strategies and those kind of things. So I explored, just thinking about options, explored the MBA and went to Howard to get that. And at the same time, I also started transitioning into consulting work. So I was doing my MBA part time while I was working as a consultant for various firms, Booz Allen and Hamilton, company called American Management Systems. And so I kind of allowed me to, and in those companies, I was doing kind of a technology consulting role, working on satellite communication systems. And so it allowed me to kind of merge my technology background in engineering with what I was learning in my MBA program and apply it at the organizational level.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I know you had a great experience in Michigan. Tell me about your experience at Howard and how was it different than your undergraduate experience at Michigan
Well, it
State?
was significantly different. Michigan State, as I mentioned, student population is about 45,000 students. At the time when I was there, it was only about 4% African American. So of that 45,000 students, about 2,000 of us were African American. So it was, you had to adapt to that environment, being a minority and not and kind of isolating. Howard just the opposite, being a historically Black college. You had a much deeper exposure to the culture of people, African American people, a much deeper appreciation of how we fit into society. So much of the academics and the social aspects of the university kind of infuse into students what role their disciplines play in the world based on their cultural positioning. So it was a completely different mind shift after spending time at Michigan State, but it was very much a growth experience because you really got a chance to feel comfortable in an academic environment and learn under a different condition, and really kind of apply everything that you had to from your cultural standpoint.
Sure, yeah. I am a Howard alum as well as the Morgan alum, and we'll get to that in a minute. But I can tell you the experience at Howard University for me was just incredible. And like you said, the cultural experience there and and how you see you fit in the world, which is very different from my view of myself or the view of myself when I was younger, born and raised in Texas. And so being in DC at Howard University, there's just an energy there that you really can't explain. You have to experience it. But I remember when I first started at Morgan in undergrad, it was this feeling of falling in love with myself, you know,
Mhm.
and being in an environment where everybody looked like me. It was just so different and um, so enriching in a way that's just life changing. At least it was for me. So,
No question. No, and I absolutely agree with you. I mean, I think that again, learning in that kind of environment really opens you up to that level of comfort really opens your mind to be able to embrace a lot more things. I think because you don't have that um, it, the fear or the anxiety of where you fit in, how do you fit in, what people might think about you. You kind of embraced, and that I think contributes to your expansion of your intellectual capacity. And then also, being in DC is also, I think, important too, because there's so many things happening that give you a much broader socio political, geographical perspective than you would in any other city in the country. So the combination of being in DC and on that campus and having the experience from a place like Michigan really allowed me to grow pretty tremendously in that time and space.
hmm so you're consulting at this sort of time in your life while you're getting your MBA. So you're working and going to school. which I don't know why students today think it's not an either or, it's usually an and both,
Yeah.
working and going to school at the same time, whether you're an undergrad, or graduate school. But you also did a stint at the Board of the Governors of Federal Reserve System. How did that connect your path and what was that like?
So yeah, during that time that I was doing all of the consulting out and the MBA, I finished the MBA, but I went to another consulting firm and I was doing a lot of traveling. And again, that gave me a lot more exposure to a broader type of organization because we were connected with various companies and various industries. But I started to get a sense that I wanted to do something even broader or deeper than that, and that was to get into academia. And so it was kind of a two-pronged approach. I went to the Federal Reserve Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve right there in DC, but at the same time, I also pursued or applied for my doctorate degree at George Washington, and they're both right there together. They're like 3 blocks away. And so it gave me the opportunity to have a pretty distinguished organization like the Federal Reserve, and I was overseeing the operations of various reserve banks in the country, their check processing, their cash systems, their IT systems, and at the same time, it gave me the option to pursue my doctoral degree while I was at GW. And so that was a very enriching environment, very tough because I was doing both at the same time. But I was fortunate enough that the location wasn't an impediment because they were so close to each other. But again, I just wanted to transition away from the consulting world and see what the academic world looked like, and that opened up that opportunity for me.
And that's a huge leap, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So why teach? Why teach at Morgan State? What was that like for you? I mean, certainly you shifted from a thriving consulting career. You're leaving that. Now you're going to teach at a university. What was that like?
Well, that was another mind shift, of course.
Yeah.
And when I finished my doctorate, I knew I wanted to give back. I didn't want to just proceed with a traditional career, and I had options to go to other schools, Johns Hopkins, and other entities like that. But having been at Howard, I wanted to give back, and I thought that my experiences um, were were important enough that I could stand in front of a room of other students, particularly African American students, and have a much greater impact. So I went to Morgan State, which is another HBCU in Baltimore, and I started teaching there. And so again, my goal was to just be a mentor or guide for other students like me, first generation students, under represented populations that were smart, intelligent, but maybe needed a bit more of a push and support system. And my experiences were, pretty significant at the time, having worked in various places and that were, fairly well known. And so I think that was something that students really attached to, and I felt a great need and a pull to be in that environment.
And I know the students appreciate it because one signature or hallmark experience from being at Morgan State as well as Howard University was the caringness of the teachers, the connectivity there, but also that push for excellence. Like there are no excuses, the expectations are high. And so to have instructors like that really is very important. It's particularly for first gen students like yourself, myself, and many others out there who are trying to make a career path that doesn't necessarily, include VOTEC experiences. And
Mhm.
I think I think that's a general struggle. If you could speak to that just for a bit, I know we're kind of taking another path, but you talk about schools that are preparing students for the vocational world, but not necessarily, in my experience, also giving them the clear access to the college prep experience and preparing them for the college life. What are your thoughts on that in the state and sort of how schools are designed today, it seems like some schools are really pushing vocational tech, and part of it is because of the student loan debt and all kinds of other stuff. There are many reasons, but it's also an industry, an industry, and they need people to get to work. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit your feelings about that.
Yeah, I have a, I guess a unique philosophy, well, not probably not unique, but a philosophy around higher education and what its goals should be. And you're right, there is kind of a trend where companies are imposing themselves on universities to adapt the curriculum to the needs of the companies. To some degree, part of that is okay, but I believe that the foundation or the contribution to the university of the university to the individual is not just to prepare them for technical skills. The university is not a vocation school, is not a training center. It is there to expand the mind of people by exposing them to a universal education. And so, regardless of discipline, I think that it's important for all students on university campuses to have exposure to everything that's going to expand their critical thinking, and that includes the liberal arts, the the humanities, the science, social sciences, and hard natural sciences. Even if you're a engineering, whether you're an engineering major or social work major or business major or law school, you should have exposure to all of them. I think it's important to have an appreciation, for example, for the arts. Even though I was an engineering major, one of the most memorable classes I had at college was a art history class, and it gave me appreciation for the history of various types of art, and I still carry that to this day. It gives you an opportunity to be a broader contributor to society. I mean, you can have conversations, beyond just your discipline, with people around politics and geography and demographics and everything. And so I'm not a big supporter of people going to college with the expectation that their sole purpose is to get a job, even though that's important. I think you should also have a goal of expanding yourself and learning as much as possible. Now, and even on college environments, college campuses, just being there is important because you're exposed to a variety of people from various cultures and countries. You're living in these spaces with these people. You're learning how to manage conflicts. It's a really enriching environment that I hope doesn't get diminished to just job training centers.
Absolutely. I am 100% on board because, I think the balance is needed. Like you said, the exposure, not just to your discipline, but to other people, to other cultures, to other topics, to the arts. All of that makes for a well rounded, I think, individual. But not only that, it reminds you that there is a world so much larger than ourselves. And it's important to take hold of that. Like you said, solving conflicts, working with other people in different fields and industries, how you can collaborate and synergize. And you just don't get that, like you said, if you're focused on just piping out people or cranking them out for the assembly line or the industry that you're in. There's so much more to gather from being on a college campus that I think you can't get anywhere else. Most college campuses are like a small city within themselves, and there's so much to explore. So,
Yeah, and
um,
there's roles for. I mean, again, there's. I don't want to disparage people who pursue uh, vocations because there's an important role for those people, electricians, plumbers, carpenters, whatever. But there are institutions built for that as well,
mhm.
whereby you can go get those vocational training, and you don't have to be exposed to the liberal arts. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if your choice is to go to a university, I think the universities are built for an important reason, and that is to expand the mind of the individual so that they can contribute to society in a different way than vocational schools. And so I think we just need to make sure that we kind of keep those ideas in place when we look at these institutions.
Absolutely. And speaking of which, a lot of people do choose their pathway because they want to own their own business. They want to make their own path. And I know that Howard University had partnered with PNC Financial Services Group
Mhm.
for the National Center for Entrepreneurship. So that is really the best of both worlds that you just described. The focus is on strategic management and technology. How is that center going? Is it completed? What's happening there?
Yeah, so yeah, PNC gave us $16.8 million to establish this National Entrepreneurship Center. And it was about a year and a half ago, we started building it up and we launched it, just officially launched it about a month ago. We had TD Jakes on campus and he was our keynote speaker. And the way that the center is established, Howard and the School of Business is the national center hub. And then we have four regional centers: Morgan State, Clark Atlanta, and Texas Southern in Houston. And the goal is to basically diffuse entrepreneurship through these regional centers into all of the HBCUs in the country, over 100 HBCUs, with the goal of trying to grow entrepreneurship at those universities and the surrounding communities. Entrepreneurship is the economic engine of this country,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. Probably I think more than 90%, certainly more than 85% of the companies in this country have fewer than 10 people in them. And so and we don't often take advantage of the opportunities to think about how to start our own businesses. And so this program or the center is designed to help uh, give insight and content for what it's like to be an entrepreneur, what resources are needed to do that, expose these individuals to the potential capital, whether they're through bank loans or other type of investment strategies, venture capitalist or private equity or whatever it might be, and just plant the seed for people and then provide the support system to help them build their businesses and also sustain them, because the flip side is also that there's a huge failure rate for small businesses as well, mostly because they don't have the infrastructure or the support systems. And so the center is also built to possibly help with that also. So we think it's going to be a pretty big impact, pretty substantial investment from PNC to partner with us on this program. And we're looking forward to growing it even further.
Okay, so you are at the helm of some pretty major projects because not only do you have the PNC Financial Services Group grant, but you also have a $90 million grant from the Apollo Global Management and the focus on financial literacy, right? And I believe that's a collaboration with Morehouse, Spelman, Clark Atlanta, as well as the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton Business School.
Mhm.
Tell us a little more about this collaboration, the curriculum around financial literacy training.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily a grant, but the three major private equity firms came together: Ares, Oaktree, and Apollo, to invest $90 million in building what is referred to as an alternative finance program, and the goal is to one of the things that students of color or people of color have not been involved in when you look at the financial sector is this very small, deep, unique area called private equity and private investment, alternative investments. And so, what this program is built to do is to help train students and prepare them for careers in the alternative investment space: wealth management, private equity, sales and trading, investment banking. There are just very few of us in that space, and even fewer of us in the executive levels of those spaces.
Mhm.
And so what we're trying to do is give students kind of a heads up, a head start in that career by exposing them to specialized boot camps and workshops and connecting them into the network of some of these companies so that they can get specialized internships, with the hopes that they would build those skill sets early on in their undergrad career. And by the time they graduate, they could really jump in and make a significant impact right away with some of these companies And then we've been pretty successful. We've placed students in internships at Apollo and Oak Tree and other places that our students have never been. And these companies have opened up their doors to allow our students in through this relationship with Apollo and the finance group. And it's just the start. I think, again, you mentioned financial literacy or financial education. One of the things that we need to do more of is expose ourselves and our students and our families to financial literacy and how that works, how those systems work to build wealth within our communities.
Absolutely. I can't, I'm just overwhelmed because it is so important, I think, for families to break the cycle of poverty. Some of these generational challenges that the Black and Brown community has had to access, as well as the opportunities, um, kind of goes back to that financial literacy piece as well. And also, you mentioned something very important about having people of color in executive level of business. So, why is that important that we have more representation at the executive level? And I know Howard is doing a great job with that.
Yeah, I mean, in today's environment, I mean, you hear a lot of people talk about diversity and diversity at various stages of organizations, and particularly at the senior level. But and it's more than just representation. I mean, particularly when you talk about corporations, and just having people in the room. There have been countless studies. McKinsey and PwC, several other organizations have done studies that demonstrate that the more diverse your senior leadership team is in terms of not only ethnic diversity, but also gender diversity, the more diverse your leadership team is, the more likely that you're going to be more profitable than companies that have a less diverse leadership team. So there's evidence that, not just, it's a good thing to do, but it can also help your bottom line pretty significantly if you have a diverse leadership team. So, the positioning of our people to take advantage of and to position themselves to get in those jobs is important. And I think companies have now come to realize that for their survival and their growth, it's important. Having a diversity of thought in a room when you're trying to make important decisions is critical to the success of your organization, regardless of what type of organization it is. We have had countless examples of companies making very critical mistakes because they did not have somebody in the room to tell them, you probably shouldn't do that because you're probably going to have a negative impact on the Asian community, African American community, the transgender community, and it comes back to bite them in their pockets. And so, again, diversity is critical at every part of the organization, but it's super critical at the director and C-suite levels.
Absolutely. And, I was thinking about some of when you talk about representation, and there are lots of great things happening in our world today, but I was thinking specifically around Silicon Valley and sort of the history there. What are your thoughts about the current state of affairs in terms of the workforce pipeline, the diversity there? I know Howard University has worked hard to partner with many of those companies there.
Yeah, we have a relationship, for example, with Google out we have a Howard West campus, actually on Google's campus.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're doing is working with Google. Again, it goes back to a couple of things. It's a pipeline issue. Google has a very specific technology that they have trained people for, and most of the people that they have targeted to come work there have been from pretty distinct schools, and a lot of them schools in California, or they may recruit at the Harvards and the Yales and the places like that. But they're very limited opportunities for people from HBCUs to go to Google. So what we did, we partnered with Google and created a program whereby we send students out there for one semester along with some faculty so that they can actually learn on Google's campus alongside Google engineers and our faculty about what it's like to work there, what kind of technologies they're using. And that kind of worked, it helped us twofold. It helped our students prepare and understand what it's like to work in those spaces. But it also helped our faculty understand what those technologies were so they could bring it back to the broader classroom and teach as well. We've been doing that for, I think, maybe 4 years or so now.
Hmm.
Um, and we did the same thing at Amazon Studios in California, where we had students working with Amazon Studios in the same vein. Spent some time out there in California, understood what it was like to be not in front of the camera but behind the camera, which is we don't have a lot of people represented there as well, and had some faculty out there to understand, what is production like, what are some of the nuances of behind the camera work and some of these studio functions. So we built out a couple of different programs like that between Amazon, Google, and we're working on a few others in other disciplines.
Okay, so what is your mission now? There's so much established and great happening in the School of Business and with Howard University and all of these amazing partnerships. What is your mission, not just for Howard, but for the next generation?
My mission is always about uh, um, opportunity, providing students with opportunity, and regardless of what that looks like. And so the more exposure that they have to opportunities, better decisions they can make about what their career pursuits might be. And so, we have to be able to adapt to a changing society. We can't just keep producing students in these very, very basic um, disciplines because things are becoming much more complex. The world is becoming more complex. Work is becoming more complex, particularly when you think about, these transitions to work from home, telework. And so, what I believe in the university and myself is prepare people to be adaptable by giving them exposure to a variety of opportunities so that they can prepare themselves for whatever the work world looks like. And the next generation students are willing to adapt to that. They already have had considerable shifts in their lives. They're very adaptable. They know what they want and they go for it, and they know what they don't want as well. And and they're very vocal about it. And so
Yes.
you have to give them meet them where they are and give them opportunities to see what the world looks like and how they can play in it, and then prepare them accordingly. And it's not necessarily the traditional way that we've been doing it. We have to figure out a way to do it differently.
Hmm. My goodness, I don't know. I get nervous about the future at times when I see the current generation because, like you said, they are extremely vocal about what they will do and what they won't do. And really, they're doing the right things in a lot of ways in terms of even when they're interviewing, they're not just being interviewed, they're interviewing the company. They want to know about
Absolutely.
work-life balance. And they want to know if this will be a professional home, are there growth opportunities, and they're quick to say, listen, this isn't for me, or to quit a job and keep keep it moving.
Yeah.
And so talk to me about your work life balance or some of the choices that you've made in life. You have pretty much been on a consistent pathway for the bulk of your 20 years plus. Is that panning out for you? In other words, is it better to be a risk taker? Is it better to sort of stay in one genre, one field for a good bit of time? Just your own personal philosophy on sort of this work life balance and this career choice path. How do we balance that with stability, longevity in an area versus taking a risk, because some of these risk takers, they are also disruptors, right?
Hmm.
So what are your thoughts on that?
Um, well, I mean, if I look at my career, um, I've had a pretty broad, diverse set of experiences, and I think it's worked for me very
Hmm.
well. I have an appreciation for technology, but I also have appreciation for qualitative thinking and um, kind of critical discourse and philosophies and so forth. So for me, I think it's important to open yourself up to be considerate of all types of learning and to be
Mhm.
an ongoing learner, continuous learner. Um, and in terms of your suggestion about risk, one of our biggest challenges is our aversion to risk or taking risk.
Mhm.
And there's nothing wrong with taking risk. You have to be a bit more calculated about it. I wouldn't, you don't just jump out there. You really have to put some time into understanding what you're, how to mitigate risk and manage risk. But you shouldn't be afraid to take it. And that's one of the things that I've always challenged myself to go for things, but I've also done it in a very intentional way, and in terms of preparing myself for what those risks might look like, what the outcomes might look like, thinking through what my options might be before I just jump into a situation. But you still got to jump.
Yeah.
So, regardless, you don't want to be paralyzed by this analysis of trying to figure it all out, but you don't want to, you don't want to just jump out there without a parachute either. So,
Mhm.
it's a balancing act. And again, my experiences have been that I've been successful in jumping from various fields and jumping into different spaces. And it's worked for me. And I would encourage people to just think about what you want to do and how you want to get there, and don't be afraid to take the first step and the next step, and maybe a couple of leaps and jumps and everything in between.
Absolutely. And listen, when you were talking, I was thinking about the qualitative side of you. It's very unique to have someone strong in both areas, that side of the brain, right? And I was thinking, I'm not sure if I have the exact number correct, but I know you have written close to 50 peer-reviewed journal articles, and also found the time somewhere to write a fictional novel. I mean, now that is a serious brain shift. What, tell me about your book. How did that happen? In the midst of all this, you have, uh, you know, this is interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's a while. There's something I always wanted to do. And I just woke up I usually spend over just before the end of the year, some time just kind of thinking about my goals and my bucket list of things that I want to do and accomplish. And one of those things always have been writing a novel. And so one year I just said, okay, this is the year to do it. And it was a combination of using my skill sets for logical thinking and building this thing out. And so I spent
Hmm.
about 2 or 3 months just laying out the storyline and the characters and what they look like, who they were, what their backgrounds were, what the storyline was going to be. And I spent a few months on that, and then I just started writing, and I was fairly disciplined about it. I got up and I wrote 1,000 words a day every day,
Wow.
until I got the book done. To all 270 pages of it, whatever it was. But I tried to also use some of my background as well, because the novel is about a secret society of African American women who have a highly skilled technology background, and they're kind of infused throughout government agencies and technology agencies, and they have various different actions that they're doing to support society and also maybe to be detrimental, and they have a nemesis who stumbles on their secret, and so there's a kind of suspense around things that they're doing and what things that he's doing to protect himself from them. And it was fairly successful at the time that I wrote it. I did had quite a few good reviews. I did quite a few public speaking and book clubs and those kinds of things. So it was fairly well. And again, it was it was a mind shift, but again, I was just another goal I wanted to accomplish. And I started working on the second one. Never got a chance to finish it because life just got in the way. But maybe someday I'll get back to it.
Well, I'm intrigued. Can we still get a copy of the book? Is it in circulation?
Yeah, yeah, and it's out there in Amazon and other places. It's still available.
And the title?
The Enigma of Njama.
Okay. Unique title there.
Yeah, and JAMA was the name of the secret society, NJAMA.
Okay. Okay, now you know we're all gonna get it because we're just totally intrigued. I mean, it sounds like a good, mysterious, I spy type thing.
Yeah.
So what else is on your bucket list? You mentioned that was one thing. Where do you see yourself in the future?
Well, I mean, of course, there's always aspirations professionally um, to do other things or bigger things, and so that's always on the forefront. I'm a big advocate of travel, so I try to fit that in where I can. I've made different treks across the globe, and have a long list of other things I want to do and what places I want to see, and so that's always on my mind. My most of my bucket list is around just um, exposing myself to things and people and places. I'm again, I'm a big advocate of just learning and growing. And so everything from a few years ago, I had on my list to teach myself how to play a bass guitar. So I did that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I I wanted to go, for example, to places like the Grammys or something, and I was actually out in California at the Grammys in October, whenever it was, and I got a chance to walk up to the door, but I couldn't get in because I didn't have a ticket. But so
But you made it.
I made it there, but I didn't complete the goal because I didn't get inside. But those kind of things. I just like to be. I like a variety of different exposures, and so my goal is to continue to pursue those as much as possible. I got about 85 things on my bucket list to do left. Um, and so, yeah, I think it's important to have fun with this short time frame we call life.
Indeed. And listen, I know a person who knows a person. I might be able to get you in next time. Not me
Very good.
personally, but that person that I know, they have gone several times, and so I'm gonna connect you and see if we can check that one off the list.
Very
Um,
good.
Now, as you're such a well-rounded leader, not just in intelligence, but in life, in your career path and decisions, tell me about your self-care regimen because I know you're a big advocate of self-care. Why is that important to you as a leader, and how do you take care of yourself?
It kind of goes to balance. I mean, I have there's a spiritual, mental, physical, and emotional side that I think all four have to stay in balance. And so most of my life is committed to the mental uh, area. And for the past many years now, 25, 30 years, I've committed to the physical in that, I work out 3, 4 times a day. I mean, sorry, times a week, 3, 4 times a week, religiously, regardless of what I'm doing. That's part of my calendar. I've, you know, I do yoga on occasion as much as I can, meditation for this, expansion of the spiritual. And so, because of the stress of the job that I have, and then sometimes I don't do as good of a job of pacing myself. But the exercising and the meditation help to maintain the balance. One of the biggest killers of people is stress, and so managing that. Sometimes I do a good job, and sometimes I don't. But at least it's on the agenda, and there's an attempt, so that I can, try to continue to do the things I want to do, and still grow as an individual.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I am just thrilled that you took the time to talk to us today. I have so many other questions that I know I can't answer right now. Your time is so precious. And listen, I can't tell you how honored I am. Talk about stress. I was stressed just
Nah, no
get this
way,
settled.
no way.
Yeah, no, it was like, no, seriously, the palm sweating and all that good stuff. But it's been, like I said, such a pleasure and an honor. Thank you for sharing a bit of your life with us. Thank you for sharing the programs that are happening and the innovative things that are partnerships that are happening at Howard University. And thank you for helping us think through this sort of work-life balance and access to opportunities and taking risks while staying balanced all at the same time. It's so important that people of your caliber take the time to just share a day in a life, you know, with us because we're all out here looking for mentors and heroes, and you are certainly one of them. So I appreciate that. I wasn't joking when I was saying the epitome of excellence at the beginning, because for me and for many who admire you, which, and there are many, you are the epitome of Black excellence, Black male excellence, Black business excellence, Black consulting excellence. I mean, the list goes just on and on. And so, thank you again, Dr. Anthony Wilbon, for joining us on Team Leadership Radio.
Well, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. It was a great conversation. And again, thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. Until next time, hey, stick with us. This is so exciting. And as always, thank you for being a team player.